Okay, hello. We are post Noviki Studio, and today this is our last and final meeting during digital cultures.
Yeah, and I will give you a short summary of what happened so far. So during our first meeting, we were hosting Joanna from Radical Group. We were talking a bit about ecology of internet. On the second meeting, we had Weronika Wysocka, and we were talking about data harvesting and surveillance systems. And today we have another great guest. Today we are hosting Natalia Sielewicz. And Natalia is a historian and art curator. She works in a Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and she is also curator of performance and public program. She curated exhibitions titled Bread and Roses, Ministry of Internal Affairs, or Paint known as Blood. And we know Natalia for several years. We were also cooperating together among many exhibitions and external projects. Many times as graphic designers, sometimes as artists. So it's like also a kind of a fluid cooperation. And today we would like to use this opportunity we were given by Digital Cultures Festival to speak with Natalia about her personal view and her attitude towards technology, because in fact we have never spoken about that topics longer. We were like focusing on our work, and this is maybe a great opportunity to ask some questions and elaborate on that issues of technology. Yes. I think we first. So hello, Natalia. And
Hello, and
I think. Yeah, we our first, I think, meeting took place during the exhibition that you curated in Museum of Modern Art in 2014. It was exhibition titled "Private Setting: Art After the Internet," and it was strongly inspired by the aesthetic and medium of internet, and also the issues that are present among artists who are using internet as a medium. And I would like to ask you, maybe in the first place, how do you perceive the changes that we observed since 2014 until today? What are the changes in the medium of internet? And how do you find yourself, and how do you find artists who were present then in the exhibitions today? We prepared also some special space with your visual elements, so maybe we will jump into that space, and I would like to ask you about that issues.
yeah. Well, thank you for this opportunity. It's great to talk to you about this and about other issues. I would like to clarify that the exhibition "Private Settings: Art After the Internet" wasn't necessarily inspired by the aesthetics of the internet or even by the dynamics of the internet, because on many levels it included art that relied on very traditional mediums such as sculpture, installation, video art. However, it did interrogate the relation of our subjectivity or different identity and body politics in relation to hyper commodified trend-led internet culture of 2.0 revolution. Right now we can almost like talk about I'm pretty sure like we are talking about 3.0 and so on and so on. So as opposed to other exhibitions that were popping up around that time in relation to, let's say, a term that was coined as post-internet, and the branding term. My exhibition wasn't necessarily interested in the aesthetic itself, or even the network dynamic of collaboration that was crucial to many of the artists who are associated with this milieu. But in my opinion, it also tried to question or again interrogate the very term, like why are we using this term in relation to certain peer group of artists who are usually associated with major hubs of commerce, of art production, such as New York, Paris, London, Berlin, and so on. And are people who create art as cultural producers on peripheries. And one could say like that Poland, especially then, with its positioning on the edge of East and West, is still very much so like, or was still very much so a peripheral country, especially in to access, like to many things such as articles, manifestos written in English. I think like the only medium that was circulating online that was accessible to younger generation of artists was the website Contemporary Art Daily, which is so often discussed in relation to production and dissemination of contemporary art. It was the moment, I believe, when Instagram was acquired by Facebook, but wasn't as widely used. Definitely not by artists. The Twitter was, of course, already becoming a big thing. Also, increasingly more important in relation to microblogging, to affecting all spheres of life, from activism to mainstream politics. However, I mean, there's of course like a major shift, not only in art, and I would say that the exhibition itself really was concerned with how affects and desires are often manifested in the public space. And this is the question of what constitutes a public space. Is it if it's the internet? And of course, it's the internet, which increasingly becomes like this hybrid space between the private and the public. So
exactly, this border between.
Yes,
we are very interested.
Second exhibition about intimacy.
Intimacy is text, and also especially this border between what is private and what is public shifted, I think, and blurred through those 5 years. I think we are now completely different setting of privacy. As you said, Instagram was incorporated by Facebook. Before there was a Snapchat who nearly died, and Instagram took off all the features that Snapchat had, like temporality and also
right.
Yeah, and the possibility of showing, your emotions that are like can be switched within an hour with daily. Now you can show it on the stories in Instagram, and this privacy setting is like in a completely different, I think, area than 5-6 years ago. What do you think about it? Do you notice that shift in privacy? Do you notice that shift in on artists' Instagrams, for example?
Yeah, maybe you could point something about your research, because we've spoken before in this private meeting that Instagram brings you opportunity to meet new artists also. Like it's a quite big part in your practice.
So I would say that like our privacy, of course, and our intimacy is increasingly commodified and monetized on the internet. This is clear, and we all know that. And for sure, all these rating systems that you, Marcin, talked about just a second ago, so things like liked or manifesting one's anger, rage, appreciation, they all got like turned into emoticons on Facebook. So this is also like a very good test of how Facebook turns our personal emotions into private currencies, so to speak. I remember like this moment when people were basically very unhappy about the fact that you cannot unlike, an image, which I think speaks to this affective economy of appreciation very well. And of course, this has changed. We have like all these algorithms and corporations such as Facebook, they immediately like adopt to micro trends and to our online behaviors. But to go back to your question about the show Ministry of Internal Affairs, Intimacy as Text, I think these two exhibitions aren't too far from each other in terms of software. So if one perceives intimacy and first person narrative as the primary modus operandi of contemporary subjectivity, starting from how do you feel today and your Facebook status to how, in fact, art has changed even outside of the realm of post-internet art. But video essays, video art, heavily relying on the first-person narrative. Even I noticed recently, like there's an increase, a radical increase of texts or artists working with text, be it a poetic text or fictional, speculative text, manifesto text that is then incorporated into a visual form and later on presented on the white gallery wall in the white keep space. This is, of course, like one can. The way I perceive it is that at least like post-internet in terms of a trend has mobilized like a discussion that was present always in the art history, but I think it really like made us aware of like this tension between abstraction and figuration in relation to body and body politics.
Exactly. You said that you are noticing like this also another switch towards the human body figure and like human representation instead of like this going deeper into this digitality and digital world among the artists. Am I right? We were talking that.
Yes, I think also like we're dealing with like two meta levels because like on one hand, internet algorithms, racial profiling on like on the internet and how basically like certain minorities or oppressed groups are excluded from like this mainstream subjectivity that's being produced for consumption on the internet led to the fact that like many groups are trying to seek for certain gaps or they are fighting for visibility within the realm of this incredibly corporatized online infrastructure. So take for instance, like the protests, how the hashtags are being used during the protests, or how sometimes Instagram favors like certain type of very normative bodies, like
exactly. This is a good point to start the question and conversation about all those biases we are constantly talking, and maybe the gender of internet. Later in the program, we have the last lecture of Charlotte Webb, who is talking about the gender of internet.
She established this feminist internet.
Yeah, and how do you perceive the gender of the internet? Because we all know that it was programmed and built by white, educated
in the
male. In the beginning,
we had the starting point with no gender, and then it became like it occurred that it's really like masculine
and we are all like, of course, men and women are biased in some way, and also the algorithm are biased as well. So they become more and more popular, those algorithms, and they in fact dictate what's happening in the net. Do you have any solution? What we can do with that, or how do you perceive the gender of the internet? From your point of view, is it also a matter of your thinking?
Well, like the internet as an environment or an ecosystem was started by, like a bunch of white men in the military and academia as a private space. And
Exactly.
it's being increasingly privatized. So one can believe that like the power relations mirror exactly the same power relations that are present in capitalism in general. But I'm not sure if we're able to access the hub visual presentation. But
Yes, please,
like
the visual part. Maybe we can incorporate it into. Mhm.
yeah, there's one artwork that I find like quite relevant to your question, which is a work. It was a commission we made with Cecile B. Evans for Ministry of Internal Affairs. A show that was largely about poetry and let's say first person activism. But in fact, like incorporated an artwork about the beginnings of internet or beginnings of bot culture, and
Excuse me, can we have the visual part of our presentation on screen? Because I think
for
this will be
organizers a question.
okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
we got it.
Yeah, so we are in this place. Yeah.
Yeah. So
now we can see some images which sent us Natalia.
Yes, because we have to admit this session took place simultaneously in two different environments. One is our conversation, and the second one is like virtual world we created to abolish the social distancing. And later, after our talk, we invite everyone to join us there. There will be a link screened as always. And this space is constantly growing with the new materials. So we can also give a guided tours for that, and we can talk precisely about every material we have there. And now we are in the space that Natalia prepared for us. It's a visual material from Museum of Modern Art presenting some part of exhibitions and documentations of artworks. Maybe we can talk a little about that, yes?
right, but I wanted to go to, if I may, to Cecile B. Evans' work, which is the one to the right. If we move from Takeshi Murata's Still Life to this maybe very pure image. No, that was it. The one with the white and red curtains. The one with white and red curtains. No,
Martina. No, it's from the intimacy and text.
Here. From
Okay.
That's one. I'm not sure if we can zoom in. Basically, you can't see it clearly, but these two objects in the back are sort of shrines dedicated to the first therapeutic bot, which was designed in MIT, so Massachusetts Institute of Technology, with massive help of secretary of Joseph Weizenbaum, the main scientist who was like lead constructor of ELIZA, the first bot capable of therapeutic conversations with people. And the bot was named after Eliza Doolittle, who was the heroine of Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. So, and if you recall, like Eliza Doolittle was this, common girl who was taught grammatical and beautiful speech as well as manners by Professor Higgins, an upper class gentleman, to be brought to a ball at an embassy. And this work was like an artistic investigation by Cecile Evans, where she looked at this key moment for the transformation of the bot into empathic, intimist machine. In the are we online? Yeah, and it was like so intimate that basically, and like it was such a tear-making machines that basically Weizenbaum's female co-workers were asking their superiors to be left alone with Eliza so they could, like talk to this bot like to a therapist. And of course we understand why, like this was a moment of like huge sexual repression and women entering the workforce, not getting the credit for the work. And this is exactly what happened to this secretary who remains anonymous, but had like a massive impact and influence on this piece of artificial intelligence. So my point is my point is that the internet and a lot of apps, of course, like they use skills that one could describe as feminized or feminine, that belong to like affective care regime, asking someone, how are you today, can I help you with anything? And of course this is a symptom of how like labor culture has changed in the last couple decades. But in relation to gender, I think like the most interesting manifestos, since we're here to speak about manifestos, cyber manifestos of the last 3 decades, they called for complete abolishment of gender. And I think this is what interests me in person. Basically, like I'm not really I am, of course, I'm very concerned about the fact that Facebook or Instagram, any type of text editor online is automatically changing my gender to masculine. So of course, like there is like a certain of normative rules, not just on the internet, in capitalism in general. And I think not the point
That's
or like
what Futures Manifesto also tackles. Yes, this glitch as a way of losing the gender, like losing the differences.
Yeah,
By Legacy Russell,
as a possibility to change.
as a possibility to evoke a change from that. Yes.
Yes, I think like a lot of young feminists, especially like queer, non-binary thinkers, are calling for that. Like Mackenzie Ward, Legacy Russell, also younger reading group. There's like a pleasure to become the many rather than just one. It's also like the call to abolish all things binary, so which is interesting when we think about binary code, about like component of technology, and so for instance, like Legacy Russell in her glitch manifesto, she's discussing the potentiality of glitches, of mistakes, errors to manifest the visibility that's excluded from the mainstream area of like mainstream formatting of
error can be a revolution, in fact. Yes, or like errors who are dismissed all the time, and they can evolve them. And how do you find those spaces for like independent activities? We had a talk, because we have a lot of talks in that virtual space offline. We had a talk with a group of girls who are running a magazine, and they are also searching for a space, like private space, where they can exchange their information freely without any censorship. We all know that internet, like Instagram, all those big platforms, impose some like borders in showing, for example, your body, or like to do it like openly and freely because of the certain circumstances they impose on us. But there are a lot of those independent movements that are trying to somehow find their space in the internet, which is, as you said, in the big area, capitalized. And in fact, how do you perceive those little spaces? Do they have the chance to appear? Or internet is in constant change. Whether in a few years, as we imagine our future in the internet, if there will be space for that, or do you think it will, be completely capitalized? What's your opinion about? What's your sense about that?
Yes, I don't think that the internet is a problem as such, because of course, like it's a commercialized space. And what I find very appealing in Legacy Russell's glitch feminism manifesto is that she She basically tries to utilize the available spaces for making oneself visible, or to collectivize and mobilize political behavior. Because of course we can, we can, and we are like, we can use like open source softwares. We can do things via, you had like a lecture with radicals, in ways that are in the shadows, or that are slightly more obscure. But another option is to like fuck with the algorithms. You can and it's not like to prove yourself that you are what's it called, like the I don't know, like meta activist who's going to kill the system. Because I think right now we're like witnessing like this major ontological shift where we're not even it's not just like the oceans or the cosmos that is being commodified and colonized. It's actually the technology and this techno-capitalism, as thinkers such as Benjamin Bratton or Achille Mbembe discuss. They infiltrate and colonize even nanoparticles of our body. Like they're changing the genotype. They're getting as far as the atom is concerned. So I think we are actually dealing with something scarier and like more radical than just finding your way around this big marketplace that the internet is. Like there's a slide in the show.
Natalia is
okay.
I might try to scroll and things thrown away. So, like, there's this very famous chart that's from Benjamin Bratton's book, the user interface, address, city, cloud, earth, showing the computational and planetary scale of revolution that we're witnessing. So, like this shift is really occurring in the vertical direction and dimension rather than purely horizontal. So I think like the Glitch Feminism Manifesto and other manifestos that that try to not abandon the internet, but they try to look for cracks, like in between of these grids, and not just grids, but simply levels. I don't have like a personal solution for that, but I think that my attitude towards social media has definitely changed from like techno pessimist. Like for a very long time, I would just boycott Instagram and not use it. And then I think I gave in, not only like for the sake of pleasuring my own narcissism, but also like to get outside of my bubble, get outside of the bubble I had on Facebook. And to do research, to read content that's not being published via mainstream publishers or big media outlets. So I recognize like a potential for collective action there as well, even if of course our data is extracted all the time. Corporations are watching out for trends and so on and so on. But
it poses another question, a question
also,
of artists.
I would like to ask you a question about this strange hybrid of avatar and real person who is instead of all accounts in Instagram. So we were talking before
perceiving
about,
artists through the Instagram. It's a very interesting issue, I think, because you are constantly dealing with some kind of an image of an artist more than artist itself. It's like representation of an artist.
Also, like saying about account, this Instagram account as a possibility of like personal manifesto of your art. So, do you see this tension, and like how can you you think we should separate this real person and this profile, or
where do you set a border, a difference between those characters? Yes, like imagine artist, imagine future artist, maybe, because he presents maybe his future vision, in fact, and the real one, is it still like a hybrid, or somehow we are very often also invited to be external advisors for some communities to judge, for example, or to invite artists, and those researchers are very often based on their Instagram profile, because artists no longer have website, but they have Instagram accounts, and they are under evaluation of judges, of curators, or like yeah. What's your attitude towards
there is
this
also
image?
this problem of a constant evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
also it also tackles this problem of institutional life. I mean, of course, institutions want to be a visible place. So, is it, like, how do you perceive the process of inviting artists in relation to his account popularity? Does it matter for you, or is it important as a curator? This is, I think, quite a valid question at the moment.
yes.
Should
So
we,
in terms of,
for example, yes, should we pay Instagram for exposure so we have more chance to be visible in the museums? Is it working that way,
Maybe
or
better hashtags.
I'm
yeah, maybe
afraid
better?
no. So okay. So first things first. I think for me, on a personal level, like this question about the real, authentic, and the self-manufactured is irrelevant, because I think like we already know that we live like in the age of simulation, and our hybrid identities, the material identities and the virtual identities, they clash and morph all the time. So, and and the internet has become like an important space to experiment with imagined identities, also like for many oppressed groups. So one has to recognize and think about that. In terms of like this idea of authentic artist and online persona and the real life, I think I'm also not like that obsessed about this topic anymore, because like I spend most of my time online, probably, like especially during the pandemic, during the lockdown, we all spent a lot of time online. Although like I did switch to telephone calls, like I did like a lot of video calls or like telephone calls rather than like text-based interaction. And like art history is full of like this narratives where the question of the myth of the artist and how the myth is manufactured was always like important, and was like since Duchamp to like Andy Warhol and so on and so on. And for most of the time, like the person who was able to exercise this fantasy about one's own myth was like a white heterosexual male. So we see like a major shift in that. One can imagine oneself even like as an object or as box of matches, right? And in terms of visibility and marketability, I think this poses like a major threat and major problem, because Instagram, with its likes and gratification process, shaped a lot of like precarious art workers and cultural producers into belief that visibility is enough. But like visibility is not going to pay your bills. It's not going to make you buy another set of canvas. It's not going to buy you like materials that you require to work, to live, to food to eat. So and of course, like not just institutions but gallery system, all cogs like in the art market machine exploit the fact that visibility is so highly valued by our like hyper commodified milieu. And I think this has to like change. And pandemic was also like a very telling, symptomatic moment where many institutions ask artists for free content to be disseminated on the social media accounts of institutions, which of course it's still labor, right? So we cannot like rely on free labor anymore. But I'm not sure if institutions are doing so well on social media anyway. For me, like Facebook became like a huge disappointment in terms of going outside of the informational bubble. I still don't know like how the information about art shows and lectures, public program gets to the users via Facebook. And Facebook, you know, like blocks a lot, like a lot of ads, a lot of algorithms. Certain topics are also censored. Even recently, I believe, like because of the upcoming U.S. election, two of the debates that we recently curated as part of the Warsaw Under Construction Festival, both of them like relating to the issues of race and migration, were maybe not shadow banned by Facebook, but definitely it was much harder to buy, you know, like a sponsored ad for some of them. And they're just like small things like that that people don't notice and they take for granted, but like they actually like make it harder to get it out there. Or you know, like one could also ask in relation to images with nudity, like whose nipplegate image gets taken down first? Is it like the normative body, or is it the body that is outside of the norm? And you will notice that oftentimes it's like the normative body that gets taken down because the algorithm doesn't even like take into account the fact that you constantly like a certain standard of beauty. So for institutions, I mean,
maybe a good moment that we would ask Anya Schiller to join us.
Yeah, because we have another guest, Anna Schiller, who is in fact head of digital culture festival, head of curatorial team. Maybe we would like to invite also Anna to join our conversation. I think what you said, Natalia, deals with also with the strategy of refusal to work. I think this is a very interesting idea of which is no longer valid, I think, in the space of social media or Instagram. The refusal to be present, like the refusal to appear in those platforms. I think that Transmediale now is focused on this idea of refusal in the next festival episode. I don't know if Anna Schiller is with us. I don't see.
This is a question for organizers. Can you add Anna to our conversation?
Hello.
Hello.
We can hear you, but
Hello.
oh, okay.
Hello, Anna. But yeah, we can hear you. But okay, great. Okay. You are here.
So Anna is representing this second part of our scene, like more digital one, and I think we are in a perfect situation in between Natalia and Anna Schiller, in the field of like technology, our practice and technology and art. So it's really a great pleasure to have you both on both sides. Maybe you would like to join and tell something, Anna, about your favorite manifestos or manifestos that really encourage or change your attitude towards what you are doing as a curator, or
maybe you have some notes about this issue of research. You did research for this festival.
Did you also use the platforms in terms of researching the artists for taking part into the festival?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I have a great pleasure to take part in this conversation. Also, I had a great pleasure to participate as an observer and an audience in previous meetings that you organize. I think this is a great chance to hear the voices of our community, which is super interesting for me. I would like to mention, as we are meeting around manifestos, I would like to mention, answering your question, Martin, one of the most interesting manifestos that I know. This is a real-time art manifesto that was created by a duo called Tale of Tales. This is a duo of video game designers, Aria Harvey and Michael Samin. We had a chance to collaborate with them a few years ago. But I was following their work for quite a while, and I think this manifesto answers some questions or tackles some issues that you touched around the capitalism and the relation between the commercial and artistic values in terms of online practice. So they met online in the 90s, and they decided to start creating video games back in early 2000s. And they failed. They tried to create a commercial video game, and it was a total failure. But then they decided to create a game that's called The Endless Forest. Maybe some of you know it. It's a game about a deer that is wandering around the forest. You can play it together with other gamers online, so everybody can become a deer and just walk and run around a forest. This is a very contemplative game. I really enjoyed playing it with some of my friends, but it's totally not commercial. It wasn't sold. It didn't bring a lot of commercial success to Tale of Tales. But when they succeeded in this non-commercial area, they decided to create a manifesto that was called a real-time art manifesto. They created it in 2006. And it was directed to both video game designers and new media artists. And it encouraged them to focus on more artistic values than trying to please the market and trying to respond to market's needs. For example, I would read out some of the postulates that appeared in this manifesto. So, for example, do not fear beauty, do not fear pleasure, embrace the digital abundance, connect, communicate. Real-time 3D is a pathetic technology. Reject the body-mind duality, and so on and so on. And for me, it's important also as a researcher, and this answers your second question about the research, because as an institution, the Adam Mickiewicz Institute, who is the organizer of the Digital Cultures Festival, has a pleasure to organize many open calls. We invite artists to share their work with us. And we are trying to we collaborate with many arts institutions abroad, and we are trying to foster this collaboration in terms of bringing Polish artists to international contexts. And for me, this I would call it maybe authenticity is, I think, the most important thing when I look and research for the artist, and when I am, review the applications that we receive during those open calls. For example, the open call we had, and Noviki was you were part of this program. I'm mentioning the Art House online residency program.
I suppose. It's just like
Sorry.
you judge us because of our Instagram, of course.
Of course.
You're very authentic.
But not only. We received many applications, and for me this was super inspiring to read those descriptions and to review the portfolios. And of course, Instagram accounts and social media accounts are part of this research and part of this reviewing process, but I wouldn't say this is something that I'm focusing the most on, mainly because I believe that social media is just an extension of who we are. And if you as an artist, if you are introverted, your social media accounts and Instagram accounts won't be, super eccentric. Maybe
it's
you
also a big
prefer
field
to...
for speculation. Yes, it's in fact a big field for artistic practice and implement some special speculative approaches to your creativity, and it doesn't have to be completely true. In fact, it's completely imagined word very often. Yes, but it's also somehow relates to what you propose. Yes.
Absolutely, yes. And some artists are super open with this, and they feel comfortable with using social media and expressing themselves online, but some of them not. And for me, this is really crucial to be able to look on in different areas of their research, and reading texts and reading their own private and not private manifestos expressed in the application process, not only online, is part of this. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I rely on social media in terms
But
of the research that
your personal settings, I think, are completely vastly different. I mean, you have a private account, and Natalia has public one.
I have a private one.
You have
I
a
have a
private
private.
one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So you both have private accounts, yes? Not.
Right.
Yeah.
But look, I
So-
think that is that in terms of like research tool, of course, like social media is first and foremost like a branding tool. So there are artists who are particularly good and apt at branding, and others use like other strategies of branding. And this is a problem because I think a lot of success of many artists today, like unfortunately, comes from their skillful morphing of art and lifestyle. Because we talk about authenticity, we talk about like this mythical figure of an artist. Many people, like including audience and collectors, they crave like something authentic that goes beyond the artwork itself. So like Instagram literally like became a very exciting tool to, yeah, as Anna says, either like not openly show your introvertic personality or show something crazy, quirky, and cool. But I think we also have to be aware that this strategies of refusal, so like showing something obscure, showing something slightly, I don't know, boring or normcore, also parts of, I mean, they're just like a particular branding strategy as well that might appeal to a certain curator. Even if it doesn't like appeal to like certain market, it might appeal to like certain, like modality of thinking, So just because someone's Instagram doesn't look like Pinterest board, or doesn't look like fancy board full of animations, doesn't mean that they are not invested in branding of their personality, because most likely they are if they're on Instagram. But yeah, I mean, I would just like, I mostly use like Instagram as like tools to communicate with friends and to read, actually, to read texts and to read like bits and bobs of personal activism, because art on Instagram quite often becomes like this eternal scroll, as it did before on Tumblr, on other platforms. But so and I think for most of us, Instagram eventually will lead, hopefully, to visits in the studio with artists.
Yeah,
Or like,
especially now during the COVID time. But it
yeah.
imposed another threat. I think this radicalization, this national talk, in fact, about radicalization of language, which is an effect of using a social media, or like effect that social media impose on us. What's your attitude towards that? Do you think it has some correlation? What's happening not only in Poland but also in United States and many countries around the globe? With this,
because radicalization brings also polarization.
And this is some kind of perceived as an effect of being present in social media, where the voices has to overcome each other and be very explicit and graphic and radical. And we all deal now in an environment of where our society is like completely divided. The society of United States is also polarized, and we perceive it everywhere. So I wonder, do you link that what's happening in the public sphere with the things that are happening, in fact, on social media? What's your personal attitudes? Do you think this is the reason of what's happening now on the streets? And
But do you mean, Martin, this process that with radicalization, this gap between like those two like different opinions always became bigger and bigger?
Yeah, and they exemplify each other. Let's say, like.
I wouldn't, maybe if I may, I wouldn't say this is the reason. I think this is also about this. I mentioned this when I was talking about the artist. I think this is the extension of what's happening in real life, but it's just enhancing and making this process more radical. So I wouldn't say that social media or the language that is used in social media causes what's happening on the streets. I think this just reflects what's happening there, and this is also about the issues that you touched upon at the beginning of your conversation. So about the privacy and about the private and public sphere. Of course, I think this is something obvious, but
So this is like a question of setting those, like borders and setting this private settings. I wonder, are they set by us as a, do we have the power for those manifestations, or setting the custom settings of our privacy online, or are they somehow run by forces we don't perceive, like different than technology, different than art? Maybe there are some different archetypes or like special forces like magic, which we don't perceive, which we don't know, which we cannot like capture with science, that in fact run our everyday life, whether we are deciding or we are like into hands of some bigger forces.
Yeah, but Martin, we should say also that this is often a decision if you want to be public, to be visible. Like for artists, it's like they have no need. If you want to be visible, you have to be a part of this structure. So to be more visible, you probably have to be more extreme very often. And it brings us to this polarization, and it's like circle.
More radical, yes, and that's
so it's
the
circle which is like constantly making bigger pressure around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a question for you both.
I think it's a question of the visibility economy and attention economy is inherently tied to human psychology as well. So of course, social media is to a larger extent preying on like most primary human instincts, such as need for appreciation, need for gratification, and so on and so on. And it also works like a trigger, because I think that you mentioned before the polarization of language in the public debate. I think there are certain phenomena, like social phenomena, that were produced specifically by social media, including, cancel culture, for instance. If there wasn't like platform for herd dynamics where people can basically, voice their opinion, I mean, it's about the type of media that we have. Of course, internet or social media is not a democratic medium, but it gives an illusion that it is, that everyone can be an expert, everyone can be a judge of another person's behavior. So I think it triggers like certain patterns of behavior that have been tested and researched by experts other than us, who like specialize in human psychology and cognitive behavior. In terms of like
care about true or false. Yes, they don't judge whether it's true or false. They just implement the action that was programmed.
Yeah, but what the internet brings us, it's also we started not to judge everything, like that the fake news or fake information, fake personality is like constantly appearing. Mm-hmm. So this position that you don't treat anything as like true, like as you said before, Natalia, that there is no like real personality. What does it mean?
I think it's no more true or false.
So we learn like new word, which is like not fake. It's like that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say like how to think about it. It's like new feeling.
But it's also directed by this capitalistic approach towards like selling things and gaining some profit. So it's also a big threat, I think, today, to not knowing exactly.
Guys, could I just jump in, because we have a question from Charlotte Webb on the chat. Yeah. Okay. The question is, do you have any thoughts on how to prevent that kind of exploitation of free labor?
Mm-hmm. I think, as with everything, regulations. But these regulations have to come from institutions, because, I mean, how are we going to rely on the state or even like on municipalities to instill those regulations? I think it's about like creating certain culture or code of behavior among like institutions. In Poland, at least, I think there's like a very good dialogue between institutions with artistic milieu, with places or with organizations like the Civic Forum for Contemporary Artists, the Obywatelskie Forum Sztuki Współczesnej, who actually imposed or negotiated with institutions the minimum wage for participation in art shows. So I think we can also like create like a certain code of regulations where we just agree on certain values as an ecosystem. I think this is like the only thing that comes to my mind. I wouldn't like rely on human decency in this respect,
And solidarity is also a big question today. This is because, of course, of the social stratification. It's I think more easy to not be solidar with other workers if you are under the threat of surviving, in fact? That's the big question. And of course, we are all workers for Instagram, Facebook. It's also obvious that we are, in fact, that those applications are, in fact, not for free, but in fact, we are working all the time for.
Yeah, they are more. We are more for them than they are for us.
And this is also
so we
big
are
question.
the product, in fact.
Yeah.
Maybe we have some more questions. Yes, I don't perceive this string question.
There are some comments as well.
Someone wants to become a box of matches, I see. It's
Charlotte Web.
Yeah, maybe we've got some questions, and I know that Anna, you would like to say something about the next lecture of Charlotte Webb and her approach to internet and feminism. And
yes, and then we will switch to this.
Yeah, and we have got a
hub, so we can
proposition
meet with in private with people.
Yeah, because we are all the time in this virtual space. So if someone would like to join us, maybe offline, and talk with us for the next 20 minutes in this virtual space, it's also possible. So you will see a screen with address and a link.
Yeah, in the end of our meeting.
And I don't know if you want to summarize, but is there some questions?
First of all, I would like to thank you, Noviki, for those 3 sessions. I think this was super inspiring, and it's not the end. I think we should all invite the audience and people who didn't have a chance to join us for the first 2 sessions to join us now. And the document that you are showing now is an open document that you can all edit, and you can add your comments and your own little manifestos there. We're really looking forward to hearing from all of you. So feel free to open it in your free time and just add some comments there. The first 2 sessions will be available online for those who didn't have a chance to participate. And I would love to invite you to our closing keynote, which starts in 25 minutes. A keynote by Charlotte Webb, who is with us at the moment. And we will learn more about the feminist internet and her approach to many topics that we touched upon during the 3 sessions of the manifesto writing as well. Then we will have a short Q&A with Alek Tarkowski and Charlotte Webb. The talk was animated by Marta Lisowska, a Polish graphic designer, so I hope you will also like the visual side of it. In the evening, you're invited to watch the films that are still available on the Ninateka website. And thanks for being with us for those 9 intensive days of the festival. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, thanks Marcin, Kasia for leading this and hosting this sessions. Thanks Natalia for joining us today. It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Festival.
Bye.